Welcome. In this lesson, we're going to simply take the sine, cosine, and tangent of given angles, which remember, the sine of an angle is just the ratio of the length of the opposite side over the hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle is the ratio of the adjacent side's length over the hypotenuse's length. And the tangent of A is the ratio of the opposite side's length over the adjacent side's length. If you haven't written these three trig functions down, please do so you have them to reference. Then what we do is we just look, okay, I'm looking at angle V. That's this angle right here. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to identify the hypotenuse, which is never the right angle. It's always the side across from it. So never the side that forms the right angle. There's the hypotenuse. Across from angle V, which is our reference angle, is going to be our opposite side. The side that forms angle V with the hypotenuse is considered the adjacent. And now all I'm going to do is find the cosine. Cosine's adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 8. So the ratio is 8 over the hypotenuse is 17. So I just type in 8 over 17 into this expression right here. 8 over 17. Actually, it says round your answer to the nearest hundredth. And I recommend you actually do that. So I'm actually going to take a calculator and divide 8 by 17. And I get 0.470. So actually, I'm going to write in 0.47 because it says round to the nearest hundredth, 0.47. Submit, just like that. And if you haven't, rewind and rewrite those down. But again, it's just going to be very simply doing this. Tangent of D, here's D. Okay, here's my hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. Here's my opposite side from angle D. Here's my adjacent side. Won't always be this way, but it is in this one. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So it's 55 over 48. Again, just grab your calculator, do 55 over 48, and we get 1.15 if I round to the nearest hundredth. 1.15. It's actually 1.145, but I rounded up because that's what you're supposed to do. I'm going to jump ahead now. And the reason I jumped ahead is they're going to give you some where you're missing a side. If you're missing a side, remember to use Pythagorean's theorem. Pythagorean's theorem just states that the legs squared and added together equals the hypotenuse squared. In other words, always treat the two sides that form the right angle as A and B, and the side that's the hypotenuse as C. And now I'm going to plug in my values. In other words, 45 squared plus some unknown side squared, that's the B, which I don't know, equals C squared, but C is 53. Now I'm going to take a calculator and do some of that math. Now I finished up this equation by squaring 45 to get 2025, squaring 53 to get 2809, subtract the 2025 over, square root now the 784 because b squared is equal to that, we get a value of 28. So this value over here now is going to be 28 for this side. Now I can find the tangent of W. Here's W, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So it's 45 because that's the opposite side over the adjacent side, which is 28. And again, I take my calculator and I just divide 45 by 28 and I get a decimal of 1.61. 1.61. Now, if you eventually get to some that end up with square roots, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with doing square roots like this. If it helps, by all means, treat them as decimals. Take your calculator and do that. But I'm going to show you how to do this without that. First of all, I got to do Pythagorean's theorem. Right here on this side, I've done Pythagorean's theorem, where I treated the two legs, the two sides that make the right angle, as A and B, and the hypotenuse is my C, or my unknown value. Now, these were square roots. So when you square a square root, it cancels. The square root and square cancel, leaving just 11. The square root and 19 and square cancel, leaving 19. Add 11 to 19, we get 30 is equal to the C squared. Square root that. So this hypotenuse length is square root of 30. Now I can find the sine of H. Sine of h, here's h. Sine is opposite, which is the square root of 19. And again, hopefully you have those ratios down so you remember it, and you should get pretty quick at it. Square root of 19 over the hypotenuse, which is the square root of 30. And now I'm just going to do that in my calculator because it says round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So I just used my calculator to do the square root of 19 divided by the square root of 30, and I got 0.795. So that would actually be 0.8 or 0.8. It really was, again, I want to make sure you round correctly. My calculator gave me 0.795, but it says round to the nearest hundredth. If I round up, that becomes a 10, makes that an 8. So it's 0.80, which you don't need to put the 0 on the end. 0.8 is good. Again, if you have questions on how to do any of this, please ask me during class.